Join me in prayer. God, as we share in this message this morning, we ask that you would open our hearts, our minds, our spirits, that you would renew us, send us back into the world, new people filled with your love and with your hope. May the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be pleasing to you, O Lord, our rock and our Redeemer. Amen. Well, I should warn you, if you've been in my Bible studies, which several of you here have, a lot of times my answer when you ask me those questions that the children just pointed is what, Cam? I don't know. Or I often say, Google it. That's my other favorite answer. So I don't always have all the answers, or I'll say, Keith, where's Keith? I might ask Keith too. So anyway, okay, I'm continuing with my sermon series on it's stewardship. It's time of stewardship, and just a reminder for us to pause. Typically, this is the time where we talk about budgets, and next week you will be invited to bring your pledge card and bring it to church. We have an exciting Sunday next week planned. You're welcome to return your pledge card anytime you want, but I promised you that before every sermon I would start with a joke, whether you like them or not. And so here's this week's. They're getting worse as the weeks go along. This Sunday school teacher was just finishing a lesson on honesty, and she tried to use a bit of manipulation, maybe even shame, with the children. And she said, "Do you know where children go if they don't put their money in the collection plate?" She asks them, and the little boy blurted out, "Yeah, they go to the movies." That's bad. They're getting really bad. But here's the reality, and I do think it's an important thing to say, that I am not about manipulation. I am not about shame. I am about us recognizing the abundance in our lives. Your giving is between you and God. You're giving of your time, you're giving of your talents, you're giving of your resources. And we also have a church budget. That's part of running a business here at the church. And so it doesn't happen by magic. It happens because we have people who are generous. So anyway, that's my plug for stewardship. To this day, one of my very favorite songs is a song from Crosby, Stills, Nash & Young. It's a song called Teach the Children. Anyone love that song too? I should have had you all sing it. Oh my gosh, I don't know what I was thinking. Can you get up and do it now? Just kidding. Well, the beginning of the song, if you know it, it's about parents teaching their children well, and then it switches to children teaching their parents, and it's this song, if you will, that interweaves or has this interwoven idea of generations sharing dreams, one with the other. And the backstory, which I had never heard before, is really a quite interesting backstory of Graham Nash. And he said, soon after writing this song, he visited an art gallery where there were two photographs that were his photographs. You're going to see them now. And the first photograph was to the left is a photograph called Child with Toy Hand Grenade in Central Park. The other photograph on the right is a photograph called Arnold Newman's Portrait of German Industrialist Alfred Krupp. And in the interview, he said, "I never had told any gallery owner how to hang my images. They knew their spaces way better than me, and I'm always curious as how they put the images together." In this particular show, two images had been put together, one by a woman named Diane of a boy in Central Park holding a hand grenade. And the other next to it was an image of Krupp, who was the German arms manufacturer of both World War I and World War II, who were in a way responsible for millions of deaths. He went on to say, and these two images together made me realize that if we didn't teach our children a better way of dealing with our fellow human beings, we were in real trouble. Humanity would be in great danger. He said, I had just finished the song, Teach Your Children, and when I saw how this gallery owner had placed these two images together, it made me realize that I was on the right track. He went on to say, I realized that we had better start teaching our children better Otherwise, civilization was in jeopardy. The scripture that you heard Gordon read this morning, in it, God gives a mandate to pass on our faith, to, in a sense, teach our children well. It's been said that the stories of our faith could die out in 1 or 2 generations if we don't share the stories of what God has done for us and what God means in our lives. Now, I'm going to start by sharing with you some bad news. If you go and you look at the research on the church today, it's not positive. I know this isn't news to you, but I just want to share some of it. Pew Research Center did some studies on from 1970 to now, which is essentially my lifetime. In 1972, 90% of people claimed to be followers of Jesus. Today, it's less than 60% people claim that faith. In 1972, 12% of teenagers said religion is not important at all. Today, over 30% of teenagers say religion has no purpose or meaning in their lives. I have to make sure I'm saying all of these right. Oh, if you're thinking about generation to generation, it used to be that very few people, in fact, if you go sort of from the top generation still alive down to Gen Z today, I know there's another alpha generation, but if you go to people of faith who say the church has been important, it's pretty high. And the boomers still, it's in the 60s. And then you go to the Gen X, which is my generation, and it's less than 50%. Then you go to Gen Z, and it's less than 40%. Then you get down to millennials, and it's less than 40%. Then you get to the Gen Z, and it's less than 20%. So you see how the trend is going. There is a book called The Great Dechurching, and it looks at the complexity behind the decline. And I want to just share with you some of these reasons because I think it's really important for us to claim and understand what's happening in the life of the church. It's not just sitting back and being like, those darn youth today, they're just wild hoodlums, don't want to have anything to do with the church. That's actually not at all what it is. They're probably one of the most spiritual groups of young people I know. But there are these 5 reasons, that they really focused on. And the first, that young people in general, or the decline, why this decline in dechurching, the first they said was this emphasis that some churches have on culture wars, and that there were issues that young people didn't agree with in the particular culture wars. I want you to think about from 1972 to today as sort of the time frame that they're focusing on. And it's the time where the religious right is what the terminology we used, where the religious right was at a rise. And there is this perception that those who are part of the more evangelical or fundamental non-denominational church, there's a perception of racism, homophobia, misogynistic approach to ministry. In fact, if you take that group, the non-denominational, the fundamental church, Christian church, women are still not allowed in roles of leadership to be preacher, teacher. They're not allowed to pray. And so that is one of the reasons. I was thinking about this, the Barbie movie that came out a while ago now, I don't know, a few months ago, and it raised so much back and forth, and there was this pastor who would spend his Sundays breaking the Barbie house on Sunday morning, just saying how terrible the movie was for society, and it was demonic, and anyone who went to see it was demonic. I mean, come on. So that's one perception of why the church is in decline. Now, progressives do not get off the hook here, my friends. So you don't get to sit there and say, oh, thank God I'm not part of that group. Because here's the other part, the other side. In the early 2000s, Howard Dean, he's a Democrat in his own party. He took his own party, held them accountable because his own party had essentially thrown out faith altogether when talking about politics. And Howard Dean said, listen, I may be progressive, but I love Jesus. There's no reason to throw everything out. And so he helped the progressive part of politics say, you've got to have faith in a conversation. It's really important not to throw the baby out with the bathwater. I feel really strongly about that because while I am progressive, I love Jesus. And I think when a church says, I don't even want to talk about Jesus, I'm not even going to have a cross, I mean, personally, I don't think that that's okay. Because Jesus is life-changing for me. I hope I don't use it to harm others. So that was number one. The emphasis on these culture wars that's happening is one reason of the decline. Number two, I mean, this is fascinating. You've got to listen to this. It's just hard to even imagine, but community is tough sometimes. But here is one of the second reason that the church is in decline. A lack of love, joy, gentleness, generosity, kindness in the church. I mean, those are the fruits of the Spirit. People are leaving churches because of the lack of values that Jesus commanded us to have. Third, is young people are tired of not being listened to. The inability or unwillingness to listen to young people. I've said before, I'm a youth pastor at heart. I was a youth pastor for the first 10 to 15 years of 10 years of my ministry. And I always loved how we wanted the youth to do all the hard work in the church. It was like, oh, we need tables to be moved. Oh, let's ask the youth if they'll do that. But then they come and they say, can worship be different? Can we do something different? It's like, no. Let's do that. Let's talk about that another day. I have often said that if I invited some of our youth here to lead worship, which we did when I had COVID, do you know who led worship one Sunday? Our youth. They preached, they taught, they prayed. And it looked different, I'm sure. And I always joke that if Braden and Cam were to come up right now, church would look very different than if I were to do it or any of you were to do it. And so our challenge is to listen to our young people. 4, the inability to engage with other viewpoints. So often it becomes this sort of homogenous community instead of a big tent. That is the beauty of United Methodism, is that we come together to learn. And so that means we have differing opinions, and that's a good thing. I want to tell you, if you are only around people who think, look, act just like you and I are missing out on so much of the richness in life. When I hear another person's story that is different from mine, which is so often, I am changed. I am different. And 5th is the church's attitudes around race and inclusivity is the 5th reason of why we have seen the sharp decline in the church. So this is what's happened over the last 5 decades. And you've got to remember that today's generation, the younger generation, is the most diverse generation living in any time in America. And so what they are feeling is that the way some of these issues of race, human sexuality, inclusive, you know the word, that some ways in which we approach these particular topics alienates young people. See, I hear this. On the one hand, you can say it is bad news, but I want to reframe it as good news and a challenge. Because it asks us as a church to ask ourselves, are we a church where we offer young people an opportunity to experience love, joy, peace, kindness, gentleness, generosity? Do our attitudes of inclusion reflect the attitudes of the next generation? Or are we pushing young people away from faith? One of our church members shared her story of faith and how she found her way back to the church that held her values. I want you to take a listen.
Hi, my name is Irmeen Nomir. I am a member of Heart of Longmont since 2022, officially. Been going there for a little bit longer. So the question is, where do I find God in my story? And I would almost ask, like, where do I not find it? But when I think of where I've come from and to where I am now, I started in Cameroon in a little village called Yokaduma, and it was just a mud hut, literally, that I was raised in. And then my mom met my stepdad, and they moved here to the United States. And I talk about God being involved at that young of an age because I was born with like a spleen inflammatory problem. And had I not moved to the United States and gotten the medicine that I got, it was originally supposed to be a surgery, but ended up being a medicine, thanks to God, I would not be around here today. So it would have killed me. And but as we talk about kind of how God is connected and where that resonates as an adult, is really in 2 or 3 critical times in my life. I had my daughter fairly young. I was 18 years old when I had her. And by 21, I had returned to the church and decided that there was, I wanted to raise her with some kind of faith. So I spent probably the better part of a decade trying to find the best faith that worked for our family. We went to Baptist churches, we went to never Methodist, which is kind of funny, but Jehovah Witnesses, spent a lot of time there, a memorial every year. I even still to this day will come and we'll go and visit that event. And so I just knew at the core that we're Christian and we had that faith, and God really did help me raise an awesome young adult. As I got older, again, even then, took a step back because I never really found the right church home. We moved to San Antonio, and I had a tough time, and we'll just leave it at that, and really broke down. And I remember heading back from San Antonio to Colorado, a different person, and just completely out of energy, out of gas, out of whatever, and just being there in prayer. And I laugh because I'm somewhere in the middle of Texas. I'm almost out of gas. And I find this radio station called K-Love. And I just started listening to a lot of the music on the way there. And it was almost like a sign of the times and everything from there. But as I'm out of gas physically and almost out of gas, I pull up into a gas station, fill up. And then from then on, I don't think I'd turned back. I still hadn't found a church home though. It took me another decade, really. And this time I was searching with a different intent because I spent a lot of time studying, trying to find out, am I, just my beliefs as it related to Christianity, because that had to dictate what type of church I was going to go into. And I found that I was more of a Unitarian than a Trinitarian. I found these ideas as it relates to what are my thoughts. I wasn't a Calvinist, right? Because I didn't believe in determinism. I'm more of a compatibilist, and that I believe in the notion of free will, and there are probably some things that are totally determined as well. So when I started really studying the Bible and I started studying what it meant for me, then when I went and did a Google search and said, these are the types of churches I'm looking for, and this is the faith that's where I came to Heart of Longmont. And I went onto the page, and it was really reassuring to see that it was, they had a class, I think it was on justice seekers. They also had something on faith and reason. And that was the Sunday school that I aligned with and went to go visit. And I was like, wow, a church that is doing not only the faith side, but is bringing in the heart and the wisdom. And I think Tricia even articulated as a conjunctive faith, in that it's the and, it's the head and the heart. And so that really resonated for me, and that was my kind of experience in coming back to the faith, and then now actually believing as an adult that I have a home. What advice would I give to someone who is looking for a church home? I would say number one is, as much as you can, know thyself and what matters most for you in your walk in faith. Number two, as it relates to searching, just keep searching, looking, and that whole notion of you will find, you will. And the third aspect of it that I think is really important, in this day and age, we're faced with different aspects of faith, a different look of Christianity, really trying to figure out what it is that you want our world to look like in the future. Is it going to be one that's more inclusive, or is it going to be one that excludes others? Is it going to be one that has really been about the community, and you see the acts they do in the community, not just the worshiping, but the actual work of making the world a better place? Or is it going to be something, and it's okay too, where you wear your Sunday best and you play the part? These are questions that we all have to ask ourselves, and I can say that should you decide to take a more thorough look at Heart of Longmont, super welcoming environment, a lot of growth prospects happening, and really is a place where all can get to know Christ and our Lord through just an open and welcoming environment.
See, people don't really come to faith because of some superior theological argument. Most come to faith because someone loved them and loved them well in the church. When they came, they felt welcomed. They knew they mattered, that they were cared for, valued. It's this sense of belonging. See, my prayer for Heart of Longmont is that we close the gap as we have all generations together in this congregation and community. And I want us to be intentional about closing that gap and focusing resources on our children and our youth, with our time, with our talent, with our resources. My kids, my 3 boys, are out of the youth ministry age, but that doesn't mean that I don't care. I have to care, not just because I'm the pastor, but because it's a mandate from God to pass on the faith to the next generations. And not just pass it on with our words, but with our action, with our love. And I'm not saying let's just focus on one generation. I want us to be a church that has all generations together, because I believe we need each other. I remember when I was in the thick of it, raising my 3 teenage boys, and I would go to church and tell a story of something that I had just dealt with, sometimes in tears, wringing my hair, my hands, not sure what to do next. I was in a Bible study with a group of women who were much older than I was, and they would laugh. Claire, this too shall pass. Easy for you to say, I would say. And they were right. Raising teenagers is not easy. It was painful. And I had this group of incredible people right alongside of me, being honest about the struggles, not pretending. They would tell me stories of their kids, and I'd be like, oh, maybe mine isn't so bad after all. But we need each other. In our stewardship campaign this year, you will see on your pledge card that you not only have an opportunity to pledge to our operating budget, you not only have an opportunity to give to our day-to-day ministries, but you will also have an opportunity in a second mile giving to give to the next generations. Did you know that our youth pastors, Emily and Brant, have 30 young people who are part of their youth ministries? Do you know that? Do you know how much courage it takes for young people these days to be part of a community of faith, and how much commitment it takes for two young people, both Emily and Brant, who have families of their own, who work full time, to come every Sunday and fill up these young people with love? I saw a quote just this morning on Facebook. Our cars weren't working, so my husband was out there getting my car working, and I saw this. It said, our churches need to be more like Mr. Rogers and less like Disney. Walt built a fantasy world, but Fred lived in a neighborhood. And that is what happens intergenerationally when we come and we hear stories, and we tell stories, and we support each other, and we remind each other of God's love. So my prayer for Heart of Longmont is that we will continue to be adaptive in our faith, that Jesus will remain at the heart of our ministries, and that our value to put more of God's love in the world will remain first and foremost of what we do today, tomorrow, and every day. Amen.